I live on the edge of town, in a house that creaks every morning, as if trying to remember who I used to be. The walls are faded, the paint is peeling, the windows are cloudy, like the eyes of an old dog that has long since stopped waiting for its owner. My house was full of life, laughter, the smell of cinnamon, the sound of children's footsteps. Now it's just me and the clock that ticks dully, silently counting down my oblivion. My name is Morgan. I used to be called Mr. Gray. Yes, with a capital letter. My signature has made deals that changed destinies, my voice has opened doors that were closed to others. I was a businessman, a strategist, the master of my own destiny. Now I'm a grandfather who smells of ointment and is silent at the table. My children? They come when something needs to be signed or a property deal needs to be settled. They have new cars, new wives, new stories that have no place for me. Their words are formal, their smiles are cold as metal. And the grandchildren? One of them recently said to my face, "Grandpa, you're always grumbling. Do something useful or go to your sanatorium." Sanatorium. That's what they call a home for the elderly. As if it's a vacation. As if it's not a sentence. In the store, they don't notice me. The saleswoman, young and tired, doesn't even look up when I reach out for the check. In the hospital, they listen to me without hearing me. They write down symptoms like articles in a textbook, dryly, quickly, indifferently. They only see my age. And not the wounds on my body, and not the deeper, invisible ones, on my soul. I wake up early. Too early, like for someone no one is expecting. The tea is always a little tart. The gaze is always a little longer than it should be. And silence. Silence has already become my interlocutor. I talk to photographs. With an old photo of my wife, her eyes still speak to me, but they no longer respond. I used to think that old age was wisdom. Now I know, old age is silence that no one wants to hear. Sometimes I go out onto the porch. I just sit. I watch the neighbors' children chase a ball, their mothers shout at them from the windows. Young men in business suits talk on the phone, not even glancing at the old man with a stick. I eat like a shadow. Maybe I am a shadow. In the evenings I write something in my old diary. For now, it's just dates. Phrases that hurt me. Looks that pierced like a knife. Empty spaces where warm words should have been. I'm not angry. Not yet. But I feel something rotting inside me. Not my body, no. I'm still pretty strong. Something else is rotting, faith. The same faith that once led me forward. The one for which I stayed up all night, worked until I was exhausted, didn't let myself break when my Sarah died. The belief that good things come back. That children remember. That old age is not a sentence. But no. Now I know, there is no place for weakness in society. Here, the elderly are not respected, they are tolerated. And only until they remind me of themselves loudly. And I am silent. For now. But somewhere inside, deep down, the ice is barely audible cracking. And something is crawling upward. Something that has not forgotten. Has not forgiven. Has not disappeared. Memory is a strange thing. It chooses what to keep clear and what to blur, like watercolor in the rain. I don't remember where I put my glasses for a long time. But I clearly remember the cold of the steel in my hands. The sand in my shoes. And my brother's gaze on the gun when he was no longer breathing. I was 19 when they took me. The army doesn't ask permission. It simply turns boys into shadows. We were young, stupid, hungry for life. And life was short. I learned to shoot before I kissed. I learned to be silent when people die. And to keep going, even when everything inside screams, stay. I didn't come back a hero, I came back alive. And that was already considered a victory back then. I had nothing. No legacy. Just a pair of hands that still had the memory of a machine gun, and a head full of ideas. I started small, transporting goods in an old pickup truck. Then I opened a warehouse. Then another. The years merged into a struggle, with taxes, with officials, with conscience. I never broke my word. If I promised something, it was carved in stone. That's how they started calling me Stone. And then Sarah. Her eyes were like tea with honey, warm, tart, and dangerous for the heart. She was a teacher, read poems to children, baked cookies, and had a laugh that could heal. We met at a broken traffic light. She was turning red, I braked at the last moment. She didn't apologize. She laughed. And I fell in love. We built this house together. It still breathes her fragrance. Here, she planted flowers. There, she fed the birds. And in the kitchen we danced when no one was looking. Even in old age. When she left, I didn't cry. I had to be strong. For the children. For the business. For the world. And I was. After the funeral, the next day I went to a meeting. I signed a contract for millions. And at night, I sat in the bathroom and talked to her towel. It still had her scent. My children grew up in a comfort that I never had. They didn't have to work at 16. They didn't have to kill. I gave them everything, the best education, the best toys, the best stories. I told them about honesty, about honor, about responsibility. They listened and nodded. And then they grew up. And forgot. Over time, I handed the business over to the eldest. He took it for granted. Not a single thank you, just the phrase, processes need to be optimized, Dad. Your methods are outdated. After that, the first cuts, the first lies, the first interviews in which my name was not mentioned. I tried to hold on. I tried to be a modern grandfather, as my grandchildren would say. I bought a smartphone. I signed up for yoga. I even created an account on a social network. One like from a person I don't know. And a bunch of ignores from my family. I became invisible. And the most painful thing is not indifference. It's that I have nowhere to turn for justice. I didn't break a single law. I was an example. I built, raised, loved. And now I sit alone, and I have nothing to reproach myself for. But there's no one to tell it to. I remember holding my old father's hand before he died. He was heavy, exhausted, but I was there. His last words were, "Thank you, son. For the fact that I'm not alone. I won't get this. I already know. But I'm still alive. I still think. And I still remember. Everything. Every choice. Every betrayal. Every disappointment. And maybe, someday, it will all come in handy again. You think you get used to it. To the silence. To the indifferently turned backs. To the short ahas in the receiver. You think you'll learn to be a background in your own life. But the truth is that each new indifference is like a nail in the body. You're not just getting older. You're rotting from the inside. And everyone around you seems to not notice the smell. I started writing. A notebook with a black cover that Sarah once gave me. On the first page, in her hand, so as not to forget who you are. I started with dates. Then names. Then phrases. Like this, Grandpa, you live in the past. There are different rules here. Said Alina, my eldest granddaughter, when I asked why she posted nude photos on the internet. She didn't even look up from her phone. I was silent. I wrote it down. Old people often confuse facts, so we can't rely on his memories. The doctor said to my son right in front of me during the examination. I was sitting next to him. Alive. conscious. Just old. I was silent. I wrote it down. You'll be fine. There are nurses, walks, care. The younger one, Vlad, said when he hinted that I was spending time in a sanatorium. He smiled. He thought he cared. But his eyes no longer saw my father in me. Only a burden. And the worst thing was not in these words, but in his looks. Indifferent, quick, gliding like flies. They didn't see me. They evaluated me like a broken thing that they hadn't thrown away just because it was embarrassing. One day I accidentally overheard my grandson talking on the phone with a friend in the living room. My grandfather is ancient. Like a fossil. He has eyes like a dead man. He really touches me. Does he touch me? I wrote it down. And I kept my hand on the page for a long time, because it was shaking. From that time on, I began to listen more. And speak less. Dinners with my family became a test of endurance. I sat in silence while they exchanged words as if I didn't exist. When I said something, everyone pretended not to hear. And then the medical board. My son brought the documents. It's a formality, Dad. Just sign it. I didn't sign it. He was offended. Don't you trust me? I trust only silence, I replied. That evening, for the first time, I wrote not only the date, but also a short sentence, the day my silence became deeper than their voices. I bought a new pen. The ink was black, like an evening without fire. I began to keep regular notes. Not just images, but patterns. Everyone who once talked about love now talked about optimization, convenience, transition. People became like numbers, tables, sections in Excel. But what struck me most was not at home. It was on the street. It was an ordinary rainy day. I was walking slowly because my knee hurt after falling off a ladder last spring. The pocket of my raincoat tore open, my wallet fell out and rolled a little further. I bent over, and couldn't get up. I asked a girl, about 20, to help me. She looked at me with a grimace, as if I were asking her to sell her soul. You're all just waiting to be pitied, she snapped. And you complain that young people are heartless. 2 guys were standing nearby. They laughed. One even took out his phone to take a picture. I was lying in a puddle. My hand was shaking. My palm was holding the ground. People were walking by. Hoods, umbrellas, footsteps. I wasn't there. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. But something inside me snapped. The internal mechanism was like an old spring that was breaking for a long time, but quietly. That night I didn't sleep. The world in the window was black, like my notes. I sat at the table. And I felt, I'm no longer losing. I'm starting to collect. Details. Words. Weaknesses. Habits. Because I'm no longer a victim. I was lying in a puddle. The rain beat on my face. It seemed to me that it was penetrating me, washing me away, like a swamp washing away a trace, except not my pain. People walked by. I saw their faces from below, skewed, indifferent, some with disgust. Someone was smiling. Another said something, I couldn't make out, but I heard a familiar note in his voice, superiority. I wanted to get up, not out of pride, but so that I wouldn't be a part of this humiliation any longer. But my body wouldn't obey. Then I stopped. My breathing was ragged. My heart was beating like in a cage. But suddenly everything was quiet. It was as if I was torn from reality. I saw myself from the side. Old. Broken. In a wet raincoat. And for the first time, I felt not pity, but contempt. For what I had become. Weak. Toothless. Silent. It wasn't me. That evening I walked home slowly. Not out of pain. From concentration. I felt something waking up. Not anger. Not hysteria. Calculation. The house greeted me with silence. But she was no longer dead. She was breathing. She was waiting. I sat down at the table. In front of me was a diary. The pen touched the page, and I began to write, not recording events, but formulating principles. My revenge will not be a scream. I will not give them the pleasure of thinking of me as emotional. They are used to old men who grumble, whine, cry. I will be different. Don't hit with your fist. Hit with silence. Don't show pain. Show me a mirror. These words became the first in my new notebook. Not a diary. But an architect's journal. Because I am not just a victim. And not just an avenger. I will be the builder of retribution. I looked through all my notes. I began to analyze, who, when, how. My children are dependent on status. My granddaughter lives on other people's compliments. The second son has connections with people who would be better avoided. I knew the weak points. Because I created them. Because I raised them. And that's the worst part. Maybe they became indifferent because I made them that way. It didn't change my decision. But it gave depth. Revenge without awareness is hysteria. I intended to make a built-up moral reckoning, not angry aggression. I took out an old album. There were photos from the war. Photos of business. Old partners, colleagues, competitors. I remembered who was still alive. Who was still guilty. Who knows the secrets. The next day I called a place I hadn't called in 20 years. A dry voice answered, "Morgan Gray? Alive?" And back to business, I answered. I began to collect data. Listen. Read. Study. Modern tools are not that complicated when you have strategic thinking. I created fake accounts to track my family. I checked public documents. I connected to business profiles. No one guessed. Because I was an old man being touched. In the evenings, I sat in the dark. In my hands was a photo of my Sarah. They didn't listen. Now they will listen. Society says that forgiveness is a virtue. But sometimes forgiveness is a conspiracy with evil. I don't forgive. But I don't kill either. I correct. I balance. I teach. One of the last entries in this part of the diary read, "While they laughed, I watched. While they despised, I listened. Now I will speak in their voices. And they won't recognize the echo. I no longer wake up in silence. My house is still silent, but now it has life, the movement of the plan, the tapping of keys, the rustle of notes, the faint hum of the printer. Everything in this house makes sense again. I am not a remnant. I am a mechanism. I started small. With what they despised, information. My children considered me retarded. But I remember all their passwords. They haven't changed them for years, because Grandpa doesn't know what Google Drive is anyway. I knew. And I knew what I would find there. Contracts, invoices, documents, hidden purchases. My son has a conflict with the tax office that he was hiding. My daughter has unsigned contracts with clients. My grandson has compromising correspondence. My youngest has a shadow business under the cover of a legal firm. I didn't break. I didn't hack. I just watched. And built. I still had connections. Old friends from the army, former business partners, men who lived in the gray area between law and chaos. Some of them are retired. Some are in the shadows, but alive. When I called, no one asked, why. Only, what is needed. I created a system. My granddaughter received an offer for an advertising contract, from a non-existent company. A week later, the photos she sent them accidentally leaked online. Not vulgar, but enough for a teacher to kick her out of a project she had been working on for months. My eldest son received a letter from the agency about a tax audit. And within 3 days, his business was accidentally audited, violations were found, minor but reputationally damaging. He is in a panic, and I just listened to him complain to his friends, "Someone is drowning me. Someone who knows where to strike." Someone leaked fake chats of his employees to the younger one, in which they supposedly discussed betrayal. This forced him to fire a valuable manager. Competitors quickly took advantage. It all looked like a coincidence. Because I wasn't taking direct revenge. I was just pushing the dominoes. Easy. Silently. In time. I mixed the truth with the lies, and the lies with the truth. I made them doubt their loved ones, themselves, everything. This is not revenge. This is restoration. My diary changed. The pages no longer contained images, only calculations, diagrams, psychological sketches. I became a player, not a piece. I studied their weaknesses, their triggers, emotional addictions. They didn't listen to me. Now they listen to their own fears whispering from the darkness. I am not a storm. I am the wind that shakes their foundations. They asked me to be quiet. Now I'm quiet, and it's louder than shouting. I didn't hide. I was just invisible. And that was my greatest advantage. Even in the store, people noticed me now. Not out of respect. Out of anxiety. The saleswoman became too polite. Maybe someone said something. Maybe she saw me on camera when I was standing by the ATM, next to her boyfriend. Nothing happened. But it's enough to feel the cold. At home, the children began to come more often. With bouquets. With, "How are you, Dad?" And with questions in their eyes, "What do you know?" And me? I sit in my chair. In silence. And I continue to play silently. I no longer walk hunched over. My back is still old, but no longer tired. It carries not a body, but a shadow. And now everyone sees it. No one applauds me. No one erects monuments. I am not looking for gratitude. I did not save the world. I only reminded a few people that forgetting is dangerous. Especially if what you have forgotten is a person. My children no longer laugh at my silence. They sit across from me at the table, as if in interrogation, and look for the answer in my gaze. "Did you do all this?" And I am silent. Because the answer is not for them. But for me. My grandchildren are cautious. They started calling. Not out of duty, but with a subtle panic in their voices. One asked, "Grandpa, are you still proud of us?" I looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "Are you proud of yourself?" He lowered his eyes. And that was enough. My name reappeared on the company's stands. The eldest son remembered who founded it. "It was a mistake to push you away, Dad," he said. "No," I replied. "It was true. You just thought the truth had no consequences." Neighbors greet each other politely. The doctor finally listens carefully when I say something. The shop assistant puts change in my hand, with both hands. The world has not become kinder. But I have learned to fear the silence that I once ignored. I have not changed people. I have not saved souls. But I have done one thing, I have regained my dignity. And I will never give it away again. In my diary is the last entry. It is clear, even. The handwriting is not the same as it used to be. But it is hard as stone. Never forget, the quietest voices sound the loudest when the world is not listening. But everyone will have to listen. I don't know how much longer I have. But it doesn't matter. I will leave behind not only photographs and old costumes. I will leave a reminder: old age is not the end. Old age is a mirror that you will either study or break. And if you break it, don't be surprised when someone you betrayed returns from the fragments. I did not forgive. And I did not destroy. I taught. Subscribe and like. And tell your friends about this video.